Thank you so much. We also can't do this without sponsors. We've got 28 great sponsors. One of those is MUSC, so we're thrilled to have Poonam Patel come up and have a moment, talk about how great MUSC is. Thank you, Poonam, for your sponsorship.
Good morning. My name is Brent Patel. I'm the Director of External Affairs for the Medical University of South Carolina, also known as MUSC. In August of 2021, they acquired a number of facilities in the Midlands to include the old Providence location on Forest Drive, our Northeast location off of Harrow Road, as well as Kershaw Medical Center in Camden. So all that to say, we're here and we would love to partner with you, be a part of your healthcare story, healthcare journey, but also throughout these breakfasts, I'm going to put a spotlight on different ways that you can get involved with what we're doing. How many people in the room have had someone they know impacted by heart disease or cancer? Yep, that's what I thought. Just about every hand went up. And so what if you had the opportunity to know if you were predisposed to either of those conditions before you got them? And so there is a way that you can for no cost at all. It's called NRDMASC, and that is a community health research project that MUSC is doing in partnership with Helix. And we're enrolling 100,000 South Carolinians to participate in this genetic testing opportunity. And all you have to do is sign up. They'll send you a kit to your home. I know we're all eating, but you spit in a little too. And then you send it back, and then they send you a whole list of data as it pertains to your history, about your genetics, where you're coming from, but also what conditions you may be predisposed to. And the beautiful thing about that is because it's linked to MUSC, if something flags of significance, we immediately connect you with a health coach so you can begin the steps and process to prevent those conditions as much as possible. So invite you to participate in that. To learn more, go to musc.edu/InOurDNASC. And if you want to learn more or have more questions, you can see me at that table in the back. In addition, you'll see on each of your tables, I put a flyer about our Wellness Wednesday. Every second Wednesday of the month, we have a virtual lunch and learn with a professional. And this month, we're going to have it with our very own Dr. Norma Curry, who's a cardiologist here at our downtown campus. And she's going to talk about healthy habits for healthy veins. So what I encourage you to do is take that flyer. We have more on the table in the back. Share it with your team. And it's a free lunch and learn for anybody who wants to participate. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nathan Lovelace with Training Partners. I'm happy to serve again as the Chair of the Public Policy Committee. And want to thank everybody, particularly all the DOT employees for being here today. We have Ted Creech, Ted, if you wave to everybody, Kelly Moore, Kelly, Tony Magwood, and Brent Rewis. Thank you all for being here. And also want to acknowledge Representative Phil Martin, who's here as well, serving in District 8, which I believe he said is Chapin. Is that right? Chapin. Yeah, great. So thank you again for being here. As Carl mentioned, you see a lot of work going on around the city, around the state, and so I'm going to highlight that today and really appreciate Brent. I think Brent's going to start off, and then Tony's going to help out as well. We're going to, instead of me moderating and asking questions, we're going to let them do the presentation. And at the end, we can save time for questions from the audience. So, Brent is going to provide us an overview of the update on the I-26 widening, also known as Carolina Crossroads, Blossom Creek Bridge projects, and Brent is Deputy Secretary of Intermodal and Planning, which includes statewide planning, Office of Intermodal and Freight programs, and road data services. And where would y'all guess that Brent went to college? There you go. All right, very good. Perfect. Brent's been with DOT for 23 years. We appreciate you being here today, Brent.
Thank you. Good morning. Carl mentioned progress earlier. I'm not necessarily going to need the mic. Yeah, everybody can hear me, can't you? Okay, good. I see all the cones out there, see the hard hats. Progress is a good thing. Hopefully you're seeing that not only in the Midlands, but as you travel the state as well. I'm going to go over from a high level perspective, what we're doing in the state, and then towards the end, we'll get more down to a project level. But when I say project level, it's still high level project level, but project level, what's going on here in the Midlands. And feel free, I'm fine, ask questions in the middle of this thing. So many of y'all will be surprised to know that South Carolina has the 4th largest highway system in the nation. There's over 41,000 miles of highway that will be owned and maintained for the year. Now, what this crowd shouldn't be surprised to hear is that we're the 3rd fastest growing state in the nation. That's great. It's great from an economic development standpoint, but what comes with that growth? Additional traffic. We got to do a better job of managing traffic. I can tell you right now, we are not going to widen ourselves out of congestion. We've got to do a better job of managing. So we've made excellent progress. As many of y'all aware, we have the gas tax increase back in 2017. We've made excellent progress towards getting things back to a state of good repair. Prior to 2017, there was almost approximately 30 years before we had an increase in the gas tax. We're basically working on funding from 1986 and 2016. So as you can imagine, it's going to take time to get us back to that state of good repair, but we're making progress. It didn't deteriorate overnight. We're not going to fix it. And everybody's heard about the additional federal funding and state funding as well. I'm going to touch on that. We're very appreciative of that. So, with the 2017 gas tax, that funding is not necessarily going toward capacity on primary routes and things like that. It is going to these 4 major categories. Rural road safety. Based on traffic data, we have realized that 30% of our fatalities and major injuries are on 5% of our network. So we're focused. We have a rural safety program. You travel on the interstates and seen the clear zone clearing. That's part of it. So when I say rural, that doesn't mean it can't be an interstate. It can be secondary roads, it can be primary routes. It's rural versus urban. That's a rural safety program. Probably also seen it on some of our primary routes where we've gone and cleared the clear zone, widened the shoulders and things of that nature. So that is part of that program. Paving. The mission on an annual basis is approving over $700 million annually to go toward servicing in the state of South Carolina. So that is our largest program by number. Bridges, we have a very aggressive bridge program. I'll go into that a little bit later. And then interstates. I got a couple of slides on interstates. I would argue we have the most aggressive interstate program in the nation. And I'll tie into that a little bit later. All right, so I mentioned gas tax increase. The gas tax increase was roughly a total of 12 cents, 2 cents a year over 6 years. It was fully implemented this past July 2022. Couple of little tidbits just to kind of show you where we are compared to Georgia and North Carolina. I will tell you that their pennies going towards their states for gas tax has been in place a little bit longer than ours has. 1 penny generates 36 million annually. But I also point out that South Carolina roughly has a population of 5.3 billion, where Georgia and North Carolina are more around about 11 billion. So while we've made progress from a sales tax standpoint, there's still that population difference. All right, so with the sales tax program, we have dramatically increased construction and projects out of contract for construction. You'll notice there between 2013 and 2017, we're probably hovering around $1 billion. Now we are at 4.4 billion, and I would expect by the end of this fiscal year that we'll be over $5 billion, either in contract or under construction at that time. All right, so we'll go back to these 4 major programs. So far, on the rural road safety program, we tie performance measures to everything. If you're not tracking what you're doing, you're just practicing, as far as I'm concerned. So, rural road safety program, so far, we've actually increased. That target was originally 1,000, but we have adjusted. We're at 855 miles. Our target now is 1,250. Paving, over 1,000 miles a year. On resurfacing, we've almost doubled our standards for what is good, fair, and poor. So things are getting in better shape. Hopefully y'all are seeing that in your areas. Bridges, we've actually increased this target as well. It was previously at 465. So right now, we have, since 2017, we have either completed or under construction 287. And then the interstate program, again, I mentioned very aggressive interstate program. Right now, to date, 101 miles has either been completed or currently in construction. Any questions? I'll ask. All right. All right, so that 4.4 billion, how is it broke down? The interstate program, that's going to increase here in the next year with phase 3 of Carolina Crossroads, which, by the way, I was talking to Carl earlier, I didn't name Carolina Crossroads. I would have left it malfunction. When they came up with Carolina Crossroads, I'm going, I think Jimmy Buffett and Bon Jovi's going to get together for a VH1. I would have stuck with Malfunction Junction, but I guess we're stuck with Carolina Crossroads. So this is just a breakdown of everything from interstates, pavements, bridges, regional mobility program, which how many of y'all are familiar with MPOs and jobs, metropolitan planning organizations? Transportation engineers cannot raise their hand. Those are your planning organizations that are truly planning your road widening projects, your intersection projects. We've increased that program an additional $100 million a year, and I'll touch into that here in a minute. But that's where those type projects are planned, and ultimately we end up developing them. But that's where it's decided. So if somebody's going, oh, we want to go widen 378, it's got to start at that point. All right, so again, from a statewide standpoint, we've been very fortunate. The legislature's been very fortunate to us, as well from a federal standpoint of getting additional funding. Now we've heard, sure everybody's heard about the transportation bill and the billions and billions of dollars that is coming to the states. What they failed to truly mention is that there was already a baseline. They just went through the whole game. Oh, you acted like everything was new. Well, what? There was a baseline. So what did it truly mean to SCDOT? It roughly meant another 250 to 300 million coming to the Department of Transportation. I mentioned regional mobility program. Of that 250 to 300 million, the commission approved an additional 100 million to go towards those NPOs and top programs. So that's annually 100 million going towards those. Excuse me. So there are some requirements for these federal funds, not necessarily bad requirements, but you got EVs that we're looking at, and you've got programs that focus on resiliency. I will tell you now, there's grants. If you want to put a cow on the moon, you can probably find a grant for it. There's grants out the wazoo. So for any of y'all that are with the counties and things of that nature, I would be very strategic going after those grants. That being said, you can't match federal dollars with federal dollars, so you're going to need county funds or state funds to be able to do that. But just from past experience, you got to be very strategic in how you go about that. So, but if you're a county, city, municipality, and you're in this room, I would highly suggest that you look at the grants. All right, so I mentioned the General Assembly and the state legislature approving funds over this past year. With those federal dollars that I mentioned just a second ago, there are match requirements. Typically, from a federal standpoint, it's an 80-20 split, 80% being federal, 20 being state. So they provided an additional $120 million for us to match those funds as well as pursue those grants ourselves. Now, when we're pursuing grants, we're very aggressive in how we do that, but we are looking at projects more from a statewide perspective. Prime example would be the bridges over Lake Erie. We're pursuing grants for projects that may be going to have a statewide impact. We also received one-time funding of $453 million and another $133 million in ARPA funds to go towards our interstate program to help expedite it. And then, is everybody familiar with CTC? County Transportation Committee. Every county has it. There's 4 cents that comes out of that 28 cents that goes to the CTC. Those are your county transportation committee. Typically, those projects are resurfacing projects. They only have to spend roughly 30% on state maintained roads. The remainder can be spent on county roads. But there is another funding source that has 100% state funding. So when I mention action, things of that nature, that is a funding. So they received another one-time $250 million. So what did we do with this additional funding? Well, we didn't necessarily go out and invent new programs. Go look for the new shiny toy. Let's expedite where our priorities are already. So if you'll notice here, you got more bridges, more paving, more interstate, some drainage projects, that's new, as well as the rural economic and the urban. That was basically that MPO program. All right, so the interstate widening program, again, I mentioned we've got a very aggressive interstate program. I will tell you, in my mind, even though it hasn't happened, when this slide comes up, I'm getting a standing ovation. This is very aggressive. Again, our focus point is widening I-26 from Columbia to Charleston. We're working on both ends right now. If you've been to Charleston here lately, there's a section that just got completed, probably in the last year. The next section has been, and that's going basically from Somerville all the way up to SC27, which is roughly where Baldwin is. So that you will start seeing more cones out there here shortly. We're working on design on our other priority would be I-95. How many of y'all travel I-95 going down to Florida, vacations? It's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. Of all the complaints I get, 95% of them are by I-95. And 95% of those complaints from folks not in South Carolina. But yes, that is a high priority. It's something that we need to focus on. A couple of other areas I do want to mention. I-85, 385, that was completed. I-85 up there going Spartanburg up to North Carolina. Line is currently under construction. We do have plans to do the remaining segment of I-85 from basically the Clemson exit on to Georgia, as well as the next leg of I-77 out of Rock Hill, roughly about 10 or 15 miles coming back towards Columbia. So again, a very aggressive interstate program. Carolina Crossroads, which we all know, I-20's recently been done. I-26 heading out towards Little Mountain is under construction. And then this little puppy down here, Malfunction Junction, I'll call it Malfunction Junction. While Malfunction Junction will probably end up being roughly over $2 billion worth of construction. That doesn't touch the existing 526. That's 6 to 8 billion at the end of the day for the construction of the widening of the existing 526. So not Mark Clark, if you heard Mark Clark. This is existing 526, including the 526 to 26 interchange. Any questions? All right, I will stay on the interstate program and the rural freight. If you notice, the interstate program is more related to freight, rural. There's a safety component to it as well. But if we just focused on capacity, the numbers would always show from a data standpoint the urban areas. But we've got to look at economic development. We got to think of the ports and things of that nature. So again, I mentioned I-26 was our #1 priority. Well, this past January, our commission approved additional interstate widening projects, just already, no funding, we haven't started on it. But those include the remainder of I-95 from US 17, which points south, up to I-26. That's number one. Number two, and you gotta think of the Dillon Port up there from SC 327. How many have been to Buc-ee's? Everybody been to Buc-ee's up there? Yeah. Basically from that interchange up to the North Carolina line, plus North Carolina is aggressively widening 95 from Fayetteville down. So, and then last but not least, I-26, basically from the current widening, Little Mountain, all the way up to the split there at 385. So those have been approved from a ranking standpoint. Again, no fundings there. That is an additional, the previous approved widening was 116 miles. That's an additional 125 miles. So we got over 200 miles that we're planning to widen over here. All right, now I'm going to get into projects, and I'll bring Tony up here shortly. I mentioned the I-26 widening. That's basically from Irmo to Little Mountain. Total cost is $512 million. Outside of the transportation engineers that are in here, how much does it cost to widen the interstate? Just out of curiosity. Wow. 30. Close, that's the top end. 10 to 30 million a mile, depending on what the terrain is, how many bridges are located on there, how many interchanges are located on there. That segment there in Irmo going to Little Mountain, I want to say it averages out about 26.7 million a mile. So to kind of put that in perspective, I want to say I-20 in Lexington was widened. That was 10 to 11 million a month. So while we're talking big numbers, you know, I'm talking 200, 300 million additional. When you add that up, it's not as much as you think it is. So that being said, that one's under construction, should be completed late 2024, around December or so. If you have any questions, we've got a link to the website that you can go to. It'll put you in contact, and all these links that I have up there, they'll put you in touch with the project manager. So if you have any specific questions, please feel free to reach out to them. The Blossom Street Bridge project, we just had a public hearing on it. It's currently in design. I think they're going to start acquiring right away here shortly. They're kind of through that public hearing process. They're working through what the detours and things of that nature will be. None of that has been finalized. Again, I would recommend if you have any specific questions on that project, I'd go to the link there. Costs us roughly $45 million to begin construction here in a couple of years, the beginning of 2024. And I'm expecting construction will last roughly 18 to 24 months, hopefully on the lower end. But again, as we get through design and things of that nature, some of that hopefully will change. And then we try to tighten that up as much as we can, because that's going to have significant impact here in the Columbia area. All right, Malfunction Junction, 5 phases. Total cost of this project is going to eclipse $2 billion. We've let phase 1 and phase 2. Hopefully you've seen the construction out there. I'm giddy. I like how it opens up a lot of the trees and things of that nature. So hopefully I can start seeing the river at some point. Phase 1 and 2 have been let. Phase 3 will happen this year. That'll be the big one. That's the system. So you may start seeing some traffic impacts on that project. What we are going to do, we're going to keep the same number of lanes open to traffic. We end up shifting things over a bit. You've got 6 lanes now, it's going to be 6 lanes during construction. But again, what was the first thing I start off with? Progress, zones of progress. So please be patient with us. But then we'll get into the later phases 4 and 5. And again, I don't have the link here, but if you just Google Carolina Crossroads, you can find out more information. And with that, I'll ask again any questions on anything. Yes, ma'am. It's in that 8 to 10 year range for the whole game. All right, with that, I will introduce the hardest working man in Richardson County, Tony Magwood.
All right, thank you, Brent. Okay, so I don't know who said give us good news first, this bad news, but I'm here to give you a little bit of bad news. Progress is always tough, but there's also some things that you know about progress, is that we try our best to make it as painless as possible. Okay, so if anybody travel along that section of I-77 between Bluff Road, 26 and 7? All right, let's see a couple of hands. So what do you think about the bridges along that section? All right. About 3 years ago, we started planning out a comprehensive fix, and we kept coming back to the same headache. How do we handle this and not cause a major problem in the future? Okay. But how do we make sure it's a long-term fix where it's not going to be something that is a band-aid effect? All right. So that's the two conflicting things that we had to deal with. Okay. So we had 14 bridges, and you can see the pit dots. They range from bridges over roadways to bridges over the river to sections of 26 right there at the interchange, coming all the way back. So you're talking about 5 miles. So our best plan that we came up with was to actually close this section of interstate in one direction for 9 days. All the bridges along that section. All right, so what does that mean? That means on March 24th that we're going to close the northbound section of I-77, I-26, all the way Bluff Road, reconstruction. The contractor that's been awarded this contract has 216 hours to complete the work. There are heavy disincentives and incentives for finishing both early and late. Every hour he's late in reopening the interstate, it costs him 10 grand. Okay. So we as a department felt like we're going to have skin in the game. All right. So this project, while we're going to do this, pick the less impactful time to use it. We weren't going to do it during football season. Certainly wasn't going to do it during heavy summer traffic season. So temperature and time was related to keeping time frame limits. So it'll be 216 hours for the northbound closure. The southbound closure will be 12 days later. We'll skip the Easter holiday. The Easter holiday will have both north and southbound open, as well as most of the applications here for certain reasons. Okay. And then on April 14th, we'll close southbound for 9 days for another 216 hours of work. The type of work that's being done, everybody says, well, you can't build a bridge in 9 days. And we're not looking to rebuild a bridge. If you've gone across the bridges, you notice that it's just the decks themselves. The superstructure of the bridge is in great shape. There are no problems there. It is just a riding surface that's causing the biggest hiccup for most of the motorists in the area. So the main part of the detour that we've used when we threw out function junction. Now, one of the things that we've made sure is done is that there will be the existing lanes, and Brent kind of alluded to that originally. Same 3 lanes of traffic that are allowed to go through there now. Of course, phase 1 and phase 2 are under construction. We've coordinated with them and the contractor to ensure that during that period, for those 9 days, for both the southbound and the northbound closures, that we will allow traffic to replicate. All right, so that's kind of the bad news. Let me give you some of the things that we try to make sure and think about as a part of this. So the mitigation strategies that we employed were looking at everything from stop traffic flows what are some of the things we can do to lighten the load. Working with our business partners and our commerce people, the port authority, trying to make sure that the people that use that section figure it out when we get to the point where it's loaded. Our locals, if you're local to the area, we all know that there's other ways to get around the group. Okay? But folks that will be traveling through Columbia, we'll let them use malfunction. So our outreach plan includes a lot of different things. And you can see here, we started with our elected officials back early last year. Ted was very instrumental in setting that up so we can work through letting our politicians know, hey, look, you're going to do something we don't normally do, but we've thought about it a lot. Okay? And so we're not doing it off the cuff. We started with them, and then we started working with some other pieces of this puzzle here, dealing with oversized overweight. If you know what that is, those are your big trucks that take up multiple lanes. See them with the follow car, the back car in front. They're usually hauling trailers. We're going to use corridor avoidance during that time period, which means we're not going to be permitted in some of the area during the daylight hours. While our coordination with local governments, work with Lexington County and Richland County. They're the most impacted. We wanted them to know what's about to happen to this area so that we can plan effectively. And that's what this is the emergency management. Now, we see a truck roll over on the side of the room. You got it? All right. It happens, I would say, probably once a month we have it. And we deal with that in a lot of different ways with our law enforcement partners, our partners in towing, and of course, if it's hazardous materials, then our partners in DK. But we needed to streamline that process. So what we did, we said, okay, we're going to station assets and materials. So when we do have something like that happen, that we're not having to wait for reaction. So we have used our time planning for this project, push the emergency management piece to the forefront of this project. So during that 9 days, we'll have heavy duty records stationed at key locations. In a couple other places where we've had those type things happen. So there's no lag time. Law enforcement will already be on scene. You'll see blue lights throughout the entire depot route for the entire period of those 9 days. So when something like that does happen, law enforcement is not waiting to get there. There's not a record that's waiting to get there. They already. So that emergency management piece, we started that process, planned that out. Our law enforcement partners looked at us, say, look at y'all gave me. But over the planning of this, it feels a lot more comfortable that we can be able to move forward. All right, certainly last but not least, the business and commercial impacts. This corridor has a heavy commercial entity along that SCDOT and 12th Street station. And we work with them and our partners at Amazon to help them relieve some of their concerns about this. I think they have been the ones I thought were going to be the biggest problem for us, but they've actually said, okay, we like what you've done for us, we feel confident. So we've kind of taken a multi-pronged approach on this. I think the bad part about it is that having to give people a bad news at this time. Okay. All right, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. Any questions about it? All right, so the process that they're using is called hydrodemolition. And hydrodemolition is basically a water jet process. They'll take a box, set it up the bridge, and they hydrodemol the bridge. Yeah. So the only part that is water restricted is the new latex concrete that goes on. You have a question?
And I've got a question. Actually, might be for Brent. Talk about the growth of the industrial sector in South Carolina, manufacturing, or its role, and how much that growth focus on I-26. And kind of, you've been with DOT for 23 years, so how transition in the last 10 years is impactful to think?
I don't know if I ever envisioned what happened this last 5 years. That being said, as I I talked earlier about the interstate programs and things of that nature. When we go and develop and rank, the port is part of that conversation. And so that's why we were very strategic in how we rank and prioritize the projects. Because from a freight perspective, the first and foremost off is South Carolina. And so if you'll notice those routes, I-26, even the next one, they going up 85, we're looking at the Greer Inland Port, Dillon Port, and things of that nature. And then, of course, I-95. But what a lot of folks don't necessarily realize is already under construction. 45. There's more freight going up and down 85 than any other segment in South Carolina. So yeah, we do have those relationships. Things do happen. We get brought into those conversations when a Volvo, BMW, things of that nature happen. So we are tied in that from an economic development standpoint. Did that answer your question? Yes, sir.
Can you touch on the Watson Street plot? Because the work and also Elmwood out there.
Watson Street, I'm not at that project level. Again, I'd recommend you go to the website. They just have a public hearing. I know they're planning on closure and detour. But get with me, I can get you some more information there. But as far as the Elmwood Street project, we're not going to have both of those bridges closed at the same time. So we'll happen after the other one has gone to construction. So they're at the preliminary stages on that. They haven't even got to the detail stage. We don't have everything.
So it's the work will still be the same. I don't want
I have not got this. Yes, sir.
New programs like electric vehicles,
Okay, yeah, resiliency. When we're looking at resiliency, we're looking at projects that are from a standpoint. Last thing we want to do is go construct something, and then we have a weather event, floods and things of that nature. Then we have to go put more money into rehab it again. So we're looking at projects. You'll see a lot. We don't have a lot of roads that are roughly parallel to the coastline. If you go to Mississippi and things of that nature, California, wherever, they're building those roads up because of the impacts of storms and things like that. Here in South Carolina, it's more bridge related. One of our resiliency projects will be the PD River bridges over I-95, where we've had flood impacts there. So those are resiliency projects. Charleston has their own individual. I would call it a resiliency project where they've got the battery wall that they're repairing down there. But that's those type of projects are resiliency type projects. Now, from the EV standpoint, we're currently working on that plan with other agencies here in South Carolina. I will tell you that program, while it's under development, it is going to focus on EV connectivity and charging stations, but in the gaps. I wouldn't see us working on e-charging stations here in Columbia, Charleston. It's going to be more in rural areas and things of that nature. I feel it's going to take a public-private partnership to do that. At the end of the day, and they are pushing that to some extent. We don't run gas stations. We don't want SCDOT doesn't want any business in the EV charging station business. So that plan's underway. I will tell you my biggest concern with EV is going to be on the power itself. Being able to talk about the gaps. Well, where we have the gaps, we don't necessarily have the lines to get there. And so that is going to be my biggest concern as we develop that plan.
Brent, how about these small legacy state roads in urban neighborhoods? Is the plan to continue to maintain those forever, or pass those on to the county or city, or no plan?
We've tried a few things there. We actually, a few years ago, we looked to try to, pay for those counties to take over the road costs. But what ultimately happened is we got more requests than we had money to do. And I will tell you, every commission meeting, which happens about every other month, we are returning roughly about 1.5 to 2 miles on average back to the counties at their request or something of that nature. That being said, because we are the largest, and it's been like that since the 50s, funding has got to go along with it, as well as resources from a staffing level and things of that nature at the county level. When they traditionally, if we were to give all the roads back to the county, that we would, you know, traditionally, I'm talking about the neighborhood streets and some of the farm to market things of that nature, it's still a financial problem. It's still, you know, that all you did was shift financial commitment and those resources to another agency that hasn't done it on that level. So then there's a whole nother learning curve. So there's a lot of, I hear you, but yeah, that's a problem we have not solved. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So the first question is, what would I get that in? Would like to educate our community who will take their route to from work, about the alternate routes and then close I-77.
There's a website, on the DOT's webpage, that shows that project. I did not bring up the flyer with me. However, I can give you that information sooner.
If you go to our website and one of the first headliner there will say projects and programs, click in there, you should be able to find it.
The second question I had is, what if I get some information about what the plan is with Monty, to run a Tyson, and when we first bought that building, they said they were gonna do something to it, it was pretty rough, it was a lot of truck metal, not to mention, probably about 250 and wood.
Meet me after the meeting, I'll give you my card, and reach out to me, give me that information.
Guys, thank y'all so much. Everybody around Paul. Well, thank you. We'll wrap up. I want to ask Janet Blanford to come up and go over the partner perks, and then we'll wrap up with that. Thank you.
Really enjoyed your presentation. I came up from down from Charlotte, and we have our own malfunction junction. I never heard it called that, but I'm gonna start calling that. I am Janet Blanford with FSI Office. Many people still refer to us as Forms and Supply. That was our original full name, but I just want to see by a show of hands how many of you have ever heard of FSI or Forms and Supply. Oh, that's great. A lot of you have not, and that's why I'm here today. I do have a local rep that would have been here this morning. He is having knee replacement surgery. I told him it's going to be bionic. When he comes back, he'll be back in action in a couple of weeks. But we are a full-line office supply and office furniture dealer out of Charlotte. We have had a presence here in Columbia for 46 years. So if you haven't heard of us, shame on us. I'd like to get to know you a little bit better. In the middle of your table, I brought some pens and sticky notes and some calendar strips. I hope you'll take that back to your office. All of you already have an office supply dealer. You can't function without that, right? But we're an independently owned small business, and if you're using one of the big nationals, you can really support your local economy and small business by having a conversation with us. I'd love to meet you if we haven't met you already. Thank you so much for having me.